And hello, welcome to AL Vibe Coding. Let's check on audio. Catching up. Okay, we have audio. Looking good. So today, from my miniature CRT screen, we are going to vibe all the docs. And when you think of the term vibe coding, you typically think of code and, programming. But I'm going to put a twist on that. Let's just proceed. Welcome. So the term vibe coding was coined by Andrei Karpathy, but I have found that while AI and agents and programming tools have done a great job at dramatically shifting the bottleneck of hand-coded development and dramatically accelerating the development of AL pertinent extensions or applications, I have now found that I am the next bottleneck. And that has to do with writing documents. So, for example, I have calls with partners and customers. These are exploratory calls. These are conversations talking about various problems they have, challenges, issues, limitations, lack of functionality, restrictions, you name it. And often just vague discussions of requirements or what they'd like to have. And it's not clear exactly how this would work, what features, what fields, what processes, what actions, what code, what integrations, you name it. And so these are very time consuming for everyone involved. And then once the call is over, what do we do? What do I do about this? What offer do I make? How do I even begin to discuss and formulate a plan to help this? And the customer has two questions, always. How much? How long? How much is going to cost me? When are you going to deliver this magical, mythical solution to my vague, undefined, nebulous problem that even the customer doesn't fully understand, let alone the partner, let alone me? So I am tasked with trying to figure out what's going on, what the problem is, what the requirements are, read minds, figure things out. So that's like half of my job these days. And so I would love to create functional requirements documents, a technical requirement document, a solution design, whatever words you use for these documents. And then the customer, like I said, they want to know, what am I getting, how much it's going to cost, and when are you going to deliver? So I need to prepare a formal statement of work. I need scope. How do I define what's in scope, what's out? Steve, you should have known that we needed these 3 reports. So we need to get all this documented before we can proceed. So if the customer signs off, which let's say if I'm lucky, I can get this delivered all in a week, right? Because it takes hours of effort to define this stuff. Then I need a product requirements document, a PRD, in order to feed into the agent and start development, because we're vibe coding here, right? Then once I create the application, the PTE, the solution customization, I need a user guide. I need testing procedures. I need all this documentation. All of this stuff is independent of what I or my developers might do for a PTE. So that's a challenge. That's why 1970s Steve is just not happy. Look at all the paperwork on his desk. He's not coding. He's doing documentation, just like all of these documents he's being asked to deliver, and he's the bottleneck. He is not a happy camper. So document time is vastly greater than coding time at this point, which is strange. It used to be we'd spend several hours on these documentations, get us documents, get a statement of work, get sign off, and then it gets thrown over to the developer, and the developer's got 30, 40, 60, 80 hours of work to do before we would start to see some deliverables. Now that has shifted completely. Now the developer can turn around an entire 40, 60, 80 hour PTE in one day. So now all of these documents become the bottleneck, which means I become the bottleneck. I don't like that. So let's try to solve that problem. So, question is, can an agent, an AI agent, rather than just vibe coding code, can an agent help create these documents? I believe the answer is yes. So let's take a look at this. Let's hop over to Studio Quattro. There we go. So here we are in the Dev Dojo, the AI environment where we are going to be talking with agents in order to see if it can help us create documents. And I have no script. I'm just going to make this up on the fly because we are vibe coding. So I have prepared my Vibe environment, my Business Central demo sandbox called Vibe, and I have VS Code with Copilot. Nothing fancy. Maybe I have a couple of extensions installed, but I honestly don't really use them. I primarily have AL language extension and GitHub Copilot and Copilot chat. So that's all I need. So let's go into our chat window here. Let me embiggen this slightly so you can see it. And let's maximize this. And last episodes, my head was in the way a little bit. So let me just maximize it like that so I don't block it. And let me turn off these extensions. Okay. Come on. So there we go. And we're just having a conversation here with the agent. So let's give this a try. So I'm going to turn this off. And let's make this wider. And we're first going to switch to plan mode. So down here in the bottom, you have your agent mode, your ask, edit, plan. And agent really, really, really wants to do work. It wants to start writing code immediately. It's like the gates are open, the horse barrels down the track. That's agent. And it's really hard to rein it in. So I've found switching to plan mode, it's chill. It's like, hey, let's have a chat. Let's just vibe here. Let's talk before we go crazy and start writing code. So I switched to plan mode for my documents. And so I'm just going to have a casual conversation. And pro tip, you can set up voice. So you can do voice to text here. Now, I'm on an RDP session, so it's a little unreliable, but let me see if I have it. So VS Code Speech, if you're not familiar with this extension, if you're doing vibe coding on your laptop, for instance, or you're at a desktop and you've got a headset and you can speak coherently through this process, you can try VS Code Speech and it works fairly well depending on what you're trying to do. Now, for a more drawn out conversation where you're not exactly sure what you're going to be talking about, I found this is a little challenging for me. I just don't quite have the practice to do it. So I'm just going to type for now. So the prompt says, when I switch to plan mode, it says outline the goal or problem to research. And for context, we have this AL project. So we're going to kind of give it context to let it know we're doing a Business Central AL PTE, right? Just so it knows it's not going to be doing a Node.js something, whatever that is. Okay, so let's resize this. And let me just close this and I'll say, hey, I would like help creating a functional design, I'll say document. Apparently the formal term is functional design specification or solution design specification, software design specification. We're just going to keep it really casual. Functional design document. My customer, and let's give it a little context, a functional design document for a Business Central AL PTE. My customer would like to manage support contracts, their Business Central support annual. How about annual support contracts? So the more context, the more details you can provide reliably. That's helpful. Let's move this. Their annual support contracts in Business Central. Okay. They would like a PTE to track and manage and invoice these support contracts. Okay. And can you help me draft the functional design document? And so whenever I'm doing plan mode or even doing development, vibe coding with a PRD, I always ask this, or I always add this statement at the end. And I have a shortcut for this. Let's see if it works. I haven't tested it yet on this machine. I say comma, AI close. And I have a text expander app on my computer. And so I always close with this statement. Please let me know if you have any questions or need any clarification. I never want to assume the conversation is finished. I always want to prompt for feedback, and we'll see what happens when we do that. So there we go. So it's going to think for a second. It says, hey, this user's asking for this, and I'll help you create a functional design document. Let me first gather context about your workspace and research the requirements for this type of solution. Now, we don't have any code. We don't have a workspace. So it's all pretty simple. So saying, hey, I didn't find anything. I'm starting from scratch. So let's see what it comes up with. Searching code base for support contract, service agreement, annual maintenance, customer. Of course, it's not going to find anything. So it's really trying to get context to help with this conversation. Now, this is without any type of custom agent. This is without any tools, no MCP, no skills, nothing. And it's doing a regex. And so while it's working, I'm going to have a sip of coffee because it is Sunday morning for me. And normally I wouldn't be doing this type of work on a Sunday because it requires concentration and it's pretty tedious. And I've got to write these documents. But now that I can have a casual conversation with an agent and it can help me design these docs, let's see what it comes up with. It's a little slow, but give it time. So interestingly, when this thing is doing work for me, I tend to be more impatient. Like, come on, how come you're taking more than 60 seconds to produce a 15-page document? That's unacceptable. But we can wait. Hopefully it works. We are live after all. Okay, excellent. So because we are in plan mode, it's saying, hey, let me help you come up with a plan. Excellent. That's exactly what I want. I don't want you to shoot off from the gates and then just start writing away. So let me zoom out a little bit so I can read more of this. And let's make this wider. And it says, plan, functional design document for BC Support Contract Management PTE. Create a functional design. Okay, the document will define the data model, user interface, foreshadowing, business processes, integration points needed for a complete support contract management solution within the customer's 30 object ID constraint. Excuse me. Now, that constraint is only because I set the ID range from 50,000 to 5029. So it's not really a constraint. But it read that and it provided that as context. Excuse me. Still getting over the eternal cold. So define the business requirements and scope. Great start. Like, just check out what it is providing here. So, document the customer's specific needs for support contract tracking, billing frequency options, renewal management preferences, required service level tiers through stakeholder interviews or requirements gathering sessions. I don't think I could have written that paragraph on my own if I had all the time in the world, right? It succinctly captures a start of the conversation. Phenomenal. Design the data model, core tables, header, lines, setup, supporting entities, invoice tracking, service logging, complete field definitions. Like, how many hours would it take me to create this? User interface and navigation. Awesome. I've never put user interface and navigation details in a statement of work. And I rarely deliver a functional requirements document before I deliver a statement of work, just because time is money and we haven't had time in the past. This stuff is very time consuming, very challenging to create. And so we've always expected, hey, we need to have a signed contract before we start work and the customer will pay for everything. This may be changing. Specify user interface and navigation. Oh, I already covered that. Sorry. Business process and logic, flow charts for contract creation, automatic invoice, define reports and analytics requirements, specify 3 to 5 essential reports. Not a line of code has been written, right? This is just brainstorming. This is phenomenal. Establish implementation approach. Phase delivery, starting with a minimum viable product. Testing strategy, data migration needs, user training plan, post-implementation support model. Phenomenal. Further consideration. So, at least in the context of Copilot, GitHub Copilot and VS Code, this is where you should really pay attention. Like, don't just scroll through this and ignore it and say go. This is where the conversation happens. And this is why I put that final sentence at all of my prompts. Please let me know if you have any questions or require further clarification. Should the solution extends BC's service contract functionality for easier integration or build a standalone solution? Okay. So, and it says extending saves development time, but may add unnecessary service item complexity. So we are going to say service management module. So you notice I copied its bullet point, number 1. I pasted it down here for my response, and I just put a colon. Service management module, colon. Do not use any existing BC service contract functionality. Create a custom solution and in order to simplify the solution. Okay. Object range. Expand to 50,000 to 50,199. Let me know if that is large enough. Okay. And then deferred revenue handling. Amazing. Amazing. It understands deferred revenue. Awesome. Let's give it a try. Okay, so I'm going to say deferred revenue. Yes. Please include deferred revenue in the solution design. Okay. Let's make it deferred revenue recognition. Amazing. Already, this thing is proposing a solution that is far more comprehensive than I would have suggested for most customers. Maybe I start to ask the questions, but then the customer's like, I don't know, how much is that going to cost? That sounds really expensive, right? Which it would be normally. So, okay. So in the case of GitHub Copilot, I've found it generally only asks 3 to 4 questions at a time. So I'm going to respond to these 3 questions. And once again, I'm going to add my AI close statement. Please let me know if you have any additional questions or clarifications. I'll add the word additional in there. Happy to invite the conversation. It's doing a great job. I hit enter. I grab a drink. So it's reading my response, checking it out, It's reprocessing the entire request, and it's starting to build out a rough design. We're still in plan mode, right? Okay. Wow. So now, very interesting, it's asking me 10 questions. Maybe because this is plan mode, but this is far more than I normally encounter. So let's just take a look back here. Thank you for the clarifications. I've expanded the object range to 200 objects. That is sufficient for a comprehensive solution, and is providing estimates for tables, pages, code units, reports, queries, enums, page extensions. Phenomenal. Like, more planning than I would have done for a functional requirements before I even have a statement of work. Before drafting the complete functional design, I'd like clarifications on several requirements. Phenomenal. Billing and invoicing. So let's just get ready to respond. I'm going to copy billing and invoicing, and what billing frequency should be supported. Okay. And let's just keep it simple. Monthly, quarterly, annually. Should invoices be generated in advance or arrears? Okay. So, there's lots of questions here. Actually, number one, section 1 has 4 questions. So I'm going to say billing frequency. I'll say monthly, quarterly, annually. Generate invoices in advance. How should midterm contract changes be handled for billing? Midterm contract changes should be billed on a pro rata basis. And, okay. When contracts start mid-period, should proration be automatic? And I'll just copy this, and I'll say proration should be automatic. I'm running out of lines here. It doesn't really care about white space, is my understanding. So contract structure. What service level tiers are needed? Service level tiers. Okay, well, I'm not going to do 24/7. I don't know who would want to do that. And so let's say how about standard and premium? Okay. Standard, premium, expedited. Okay. And of course, a customer may not know what these tiers are. So we're just making things up. And I found that when I offer these options, that starts the conversation. And they're just like, oh, okay, let's change that. Because on a blank sheet of paper, they won't know what the tiers should be, what they want necessarily if they've never done this before. But if you start to offer these options, just like the agent is offering me these options, it's fantastic. Saves so much time. Should contract support included hours with overage billing or a flat fee only? That's a great question. Let's just propose overage billing. Contract should support included hours with overage billing. Okay. And yes, one contract can, I'll just say, one contract covers the entire customer, regardless of users or sites. And it hasn't really asked me what type of support I'm providing, right? There's a big difference between, say, Business Central help desk support and elevator repair support. So maybe we need to provide it some context. So context. The support contracts are for remote software support, help desk, tickets, and remote troubleshooting calls. How's that? Okay, so let's give it a little more context so it narrows in, so it doesn't think we're repairing vehicles, service vehicles across the country. And should contract lines support items, resources, GL accounts? Um, I have no idea. Let's do items. Contract lines should support items. Not sure. Renewal management. Should contracts auto-renew by default? Sure. Contracts should. Like, you can see how this solution that I imagine something very simple is becoming much more expansive. Will the customer want this? I don't know. But if we lay it out and offer it to them, they say, nah, that's not really relevant to us. And then they'll say, oh, that's an interesting idea. Can we do this instead? Okay. Contract should auto renew by default. That's awesome. Okay. How many, how many days before expiration? Great question. I support several hundred renewals for customers, and we have found 30 days, absolutely not enough. We at least need 60 to 90 days. Okay? Okay. So we're going to say renewal notifications 60 to 90 days. Renewal notifications should be configurable with a default of 90 days before expiration, based on my experience. How should price increases be handled during renewal? Okay, so how about this? Let's propose option to have annual price increases predefined in service contract renewal setup. Okay, very cool. I've never thought of that. Deferred revenue. Should deferred revenue be posted automatically? Sorry, I'm going to have to make this smaller. There's a lot going on here. Should deferred revenue be posted automatically with invoices or posted? Sure. Why not? Deferred revenue should be posted automatically when invoices are posted. Excellent. So I'm taking its question, just turning it into a statement. GL account structure is preferred. One deferred revenue account per contract type. Not exactly sure what that means, but let's make it configurable. GL account structure. Okay. Deferred revenue. GL account structure with revenue account per contract type. Let's see what that means. Like, how about, let's call it configurable. Okay, normally we would never have this conversation because the scope just explodes with the customer and they're like, how much is it going to cost? And you just say $800,000 and they'll say, you're crazy, right? So this exploratory conversation alone was too much to even have, at least in my world with most SMB mid-market customers, because this was vastly too expensive to even consider these options. But now, when the cost of development, like it doesn't really matter if you have a 40-hour project or an 80-hour project, the coding time when you vibe code is negligible. You got to troubleshoot, you got to test, right? There's still overhead, but now we can have these conversations. Okay, so, where were we? Should recognition be monthly or match the billing frequency? I would say let's do RevRec monthly, okay? So I'm going to, oh, and by the way, in my plan chat here, I'm doing shift enter so that I don't submit this accidentally. It's kind of painful when you accidentally do that. So revenue recognition should be monthly. Okay. And now, is straight line recognition acceptable? I have no idea. I'm not a RevRec expert. So let's go with straight line revenue recognition, shift enter. Use straight line. Maybe there's some accounting nerds who can offer suggestions here. Multi-currency and dimensions. Whoa. Okay, so one of my rules, at least in the US, I do not want to deal with multi-currency. So we're going to say there will be no multi-currency support. Okay. Which dimensions are required for financial reporting? And good question. I don't know that it matters. So let's just pretend that the customer, well, I guess if it's a support contract, I'll say for dimensions, support the dimensions that are configured on the GL setup page. I'll say support the shortcut dimensions. Okay, so if they have 2 set up, that's all we need. If they have 5 set up, support that. Okay, approval workflows. I would have never considered that, but let's go. Our approval workflows needed: new contracts, renewals, modifications, cancellation. Amazing. So let's do for new contracts only. Approval workflows should be used for new contracts. Okay, this is going to get really big. I'm kind of scared right now. Not for renewals, modifications, cancellations. What are the approval hierarchy levels? And using a single manager approval. Okay. Document management. Holy cow. Should the system generate printable contract agreements, DocuSign, contract terms and conditions? I'm just going to say no document management at this time. Okay, just to keep things sane. Reporting priorities. I don't know. So reporting, defer reporting design at this time. Like, it's getting out of control. User roles. Oh my gosh. So user roles and permissions, propose basic roles and permission sets for me. Okay. Existing data, no existing data or data migration. What volume of contracts do you anticipate? Contract volume. I don't know why it matters, but I ask this question often. And so up to 10 new contracts per month. Okay. And holy cow, I'm afraid to even ask. So I won't even prompt it for more questions. So let's hit enter. How am I doing on time? We're at 34 minutes, but okay. So I was meant to move forward. So it says, great. Whew. I have all the information needed. So check this out. Executive summary, business requirements, business rules. This could be based off of a 15, 30-minute conversation with the customer. You just jot down high level, you sketch out basic requirements. It's going into table specifications. It's listing out the fields. Is it a decimal? Is it an enum? Is it a code 20? I don't know. It's going to propose it. Is it right? Is it wrong? It doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be perfect. You just had a 15-minute call with a customer. Internal customer. If you're a consultant, it could be an external customer. This is what I do now because I do not have 8 hours to create these documents. If I had to spend 4 to 8 hours, I just wouldn't do it. And the conversation never proceeds simply because it was too expensive in the past. So let's see what it comes up with. Let's have it wrap up so that we can move to the next step. User interface specifications. Oh, buckle up. Buckle up. Filter views. It's doing the page layouts. Like administration fast tab, shortcuts, actions, business logic on page. Like it's already designing this solution. I just wanted a functional requirements doc. So I could dial it back and say like, whoa there, hold on. Don't get so excited. But honestly, so this is actually a legitimate question. Should you deliver a really dialed back, just a functional requirements document, or should you include some of the proposed design? I'm debating this at the moment. The problem I have with this design solution where it's going way ahead, it's doing field definitions and page numbers and object IDs, and it's going crazy, is I suspect this is too much. I don't think if I deliver this to a partner, I think their eyes glaze over. A customer, it's like, whoa, what do I even make of this? It's way too much information. So what I think I'm going to do is ask this agent, this plan agent, to dial this way back, not include object IDs, not include field level detail, maybe include the user interface design to stimulate some conversation and get the conversation started. But I don't need to document code units. No one cares about that. The partner doesn't care. The customer doesn't care. So let's see what it comes up with. I'll ask it to dial back, say, chill, like just take it easy. I just want requirements. I don't want solution design. Hopefully it's going to get through this. So it's at workflows now. Item master integration, item cards, resources. So let me just start pre-crafting the prompt. Thank you for this comprehensive solution. I only need a functional requirements document with preliminary proposed design. Let's say preliminary high level design to start a discussion regarding a potential solution. Please remove detailed design elements such as field data types, object IDs, etc. And so notice what just happened here. Sorry, the response hit the length limit. Please rephrase your prompt. This is one of the limitations I've found repeatedly doing this by default with Copilot. GitHub Copilot has a response length limit, response token limit, and so it can only return so much in one chunk. So you can do a couple things. One, we're asking it to dial it back, keep it much simpler. Two, you can ask it to propose, say, an outline first and then have it work at on the chunks of the content. So let's do that. Thank you for this comprehensive solution. I only need a functional requirements document with preliminary high-level design to start a discussion regarding a potential solution. Please remove detailed design elements, but you can keep discussion of user interface and high-level process flows. Okay? And please start with a functional requirements. Please start with an outline or TOC for the functional requirements so that we can work on each section separately. Okay? So let's see. Let's have it dial back. I've never done this before, but let's see what happens. Okay, perfect. Table of contents. Let's start there. So now as it's working through this, it's having to keep all this in context, in its memory. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up the file pane and I'll say, please write this, what did it call it? A functional requirements document table of contents to a markdown file named in .md. Okay, so I'm going to tell it I want markdown, and I'm going to call it 00 at the top so that it gets named in order in a new docs subdirectory. So let's get this on paper, save it to disk, and it's going to figure out Okay. So I'm still in plan mode, right? So when you transition from plan mode doesn't write to disk. It doesn't modify files. It doesn't take actions on your project. So it's saying, hey, I can't do that, but here's the file. You can do it yourself. And so I'm going to click on Start Implementation, and I'm just going to hit Enter. So you click on Start Implementation, it switches automatically to agent mode, gives you a prompt of Start Implementation, and it's off to the races. So there's our docs subfolder and 00 functional requirements. Which section would you like me to draft next? And we can take a look. Here's our executive summary, business background and context, functional requirements. So I'm going to click Keep, and proceed drafting writing sections 1 and 2. And so by doing the table of contents first, getting it to disk, getting your doc folder structure set up, and then having it work in each section, you avoid that context output window limitation. So you hopefully avoid those errors. Now, I've been able to get Copilot to generate up to 15 to 20 pages without hitting that context output window. So let's see how it does. Now, we may need to move on because I'm already at 40 plus minutes. So it's going to write this document. So what else did we have? This has taken a little longer than I wanted. So I may have to have a separate follow-up on the other documents. But I think this is a great demonstration on its capabilities. What I love to do is get this functional requirements document written so that we can review it. And it's saying I should create these as separate functional documents, separate markdown files in the docs directory. Let me create comprehensive but high-level content based on all the requirements the user provided. So one of the challenges I have found with letting it run with a rather broad or expansive scope is it will write a lot. It is extremely verbose, overly comprehensive, shall we say. And I asked it for a user guide, and it wrote a 520-page user guide for one of my Business Central applications. Just absolutely overkill, and no one's going to read that, right? So it says, great, I wrote 1 and 2. Fantastic. So it's doing okay. So I'll say, proceed with sections 3 and 4. So let's have it do that. Okay, so functional requirements, high-level solution design. What I want to do is get past this so we can get to some user interface design discussions. Show you a very cool feature with that. So let's take a look. While it's doing that, and this is one kind of nice thing, it's working, and we see that it has executive summary. So let's click on the Keep button here. And let's look at the executive summary. And we're going to press, with the markdown file open, we're going to press Control-Shift-V. Oh, Control-Shift-V. Control-V? No? I thought it was... Okay. I thought it was... Let me just look this up. I swear it's Control-Shift-V. In order to preview in VS Code. How to shortcut to preview Markdown in VS Code. It is Control-Shift-V. Okay. Oh, maybe I was hitting the wrong button. Control-Shift-V. Okay, maybe my keyboard shortcuts are broken because of something else I have going on here. I was hitting the wrong key. Good job. Okay, so look at this. Current state, business environment, current business volume, expected growth, usage, pain points. Now, this may not be relevant for this hypothetical customer, but this is something you could start with that you could then pare down. And this is business background and context. Not quite as exciting, but let's take a look at executive summary, Control Shift V. Business objectives, automate billing process. So this can be a discussion point to have with the customer, right? Okay. And so it goes on and on and on. Security, out of scope for phase one, multi-currency support, technical scope, key benefits. Okay, not as exciting. I'd like to get to the meat. It's still cranking on 3 and 4. So if this doesn't proceed quickly, so it's actually interesting. So this does take time, right? You're not going to do this in 5 minutes. At least I don't recommend it. This does take time. But instead of 4 to 8 hours of me having to craft this manually, this can be 1 to 2 hours of me having a discussion with the AI. So it is taking a while. Hopefully we can get to, let's see what section I would like it to do. Okay, so I think section 4, there we go, user interface and navigation. That's where I'd really like to show one of the neat tricks. It's taken a while. So we sit back, we have a drink, comprehensive content for both sections, business-focused high-level approach. So there we go. Finally, creating section 3, creating section 4, created, almost done. These sections are complete. Okay, before I proceed, I want to show this neat trick. I'm going to click on keep. Now, let's just close these. Okay, let's look at the high-level solution design. Control Shift V. We're going to preview the markdown. Entity relationship overview. Core tables. Okay, very handy. Logs, revenue entry, supporting entities, page architecture. Okay, so here's the fun prompt. Check this out. Please, in section 04, please create wireframes, page wireframes, inline SVG images in the markdown files. Okay, in section 04, please create page wireframes of relevant custom pages as inline SVG images in the markdown file. I'm going to cross my fingers and hope this works. I have found this absolutely amazing. It is just bonkers because this would take me several hours to mock up wireframes. And I just use PowerPoint because it's easy to draw images, but check this out. Absolutely bonkers. And while it's doing this, let me go into here, open up my docs. And so while it's working, I happen to use a tool called Markdown Monster. So I looked at various Markdown review editing tools, and I found this one on Windows that is pretty cool so far called Markdown Monster. So let's pull up the high-level solution design in Markdown Monster. And a few interesting things about this is it's not this super minimalist Markdown editor. There are a few of those. I don't find those valuable because I'm not looking to handwrite these Markdown files. I'm not authoring. I'm looking to edit, tailor. And this I have found has been pretty effective. So this is a nice preview tool, and a couple benefits I found. Markdown Monster can do full inline HTML rendering, including SVG. So very handy, and it has a great output to PDF. Also, one huge benefit, it includes a command line utility to perform just about all the actions you can perform for the UI, which means that the VS Code agent can fully automate tasks for Markdown Monster. So if I have 20 different MD files like are being compiled here, it can consolidate them into a single Markdown. It can then convert to PDF for me with a prompt. I'm not having to open Markdown Monster to perform these tasks. So it's trying to create clean wireframes in 04 solution design. So let's take a look at this. Okay, it's edited, it's working, added 3 comprehensive page wireframes to my 04 doc. Inline SVGs. Okay, now it appears that VS Code is unable to render these SVGs, which is why Markdown Monster is super handy. So let's go back to Markdown Monster, take a look at this, and see what we've got. Let's see if we can, oops, wrong tool. Let's go back to Markdown Monster. There we are. Let's see what we see. Check this out. I just asked for it. Full rendering of a support contract mockup page in SVG embedded in your Markdown in the functional requirements document that I've spent less than an hour on while live streaming, right? So this doesn't look exactly like a Business Central page, but when was the last time you were able to deliver full wireframes in a functional requirements document after a 15-minute phone call, let's say for no charge? Hey, here you go. Let's have a discussion because now I'm investing in this conversation, which will lead to development work. Look at that. 71% used. Absolutely bonkers. Active, pending approval, expired, premium standard, start end dates, annual value, link to customers. New, send approval, create invoice, renew, active. Absolutely phenomenal. It's got the Business Central fact box design pattern here. What else do we got here? Look at this. Here's the wireframe of our support contract. Absolutely crazy. Contract number, proposed fields, details, lines, fact box, financial summary. Absolutely crazy. Support contract setup. Billing frequency, GL accounts, invoice generation frequency, expedited service levels and notifications. I mean, so now I have just created, let's just pretend that I've created this functional requirements document, okay? So here's what I've been doing because I use Markdown Monster. I'm going to close all these files and I don't want to save any changes. And I'm just going to minimize this. Let's go back to VS Code and let's pretend we're done. And so please combine all of the design Markdown files to a file named 000 functional requirements doc.md in the docs directory. Okay. So we're having VS Code just combine this all so we don't have to deal with multiple files. It's going to be one doc. Page numbering will be consistent. And let me close these. Okay, so you could go on. You could have the sections you want. You could eliminate the sections you don't want, right? Okay, it's creating a combined document. And great, absolutely, do whatever you need. And there is our 000 functional requirements document. Okay, this could have 10 sections, all up to you. Great. So now I will say, please use Markdown Monster command line utility to convert the 000 Markdown file to a PDF using the, and I forget which template I have. Let's do save as PDF, PDF output dash Steve. Okay, so using the PDF output Steve format. So it understands how to call Markdown Monster. It's not perfect. It's made a few mistakes, but it's saying, okay, I now have this MM. I don't know if this will work. I think this is a mistake because it's launching Markdown Monster, not MM CLI. Okay, so please use the MM CLI tool. It thinks it already used it, but I don't think that's the correct command. Okay. So it's looking for the document to see if it did it. Okay. So let's stop this. So it's gone off the rails a little bit. So MM is the Windows application. Please use the, and let me just give it a hint just so that we save time here. Okay, so what is the Markdown Monster CLI tool called? I'm checking with Perplexity. And it is MMCLI. Please use MMCLI. Okay. There we go. So it knows to use this theme, and it's now back on the right track. Okay, so we're going to allow, it's going to do a test path to make sure that the PDF actually output properly. PDF not found. It's calling help to get its own instructions. Markdown to PDF. Okay, so it now understands the correct options. Okay, PDF has successfully been created. Let's go check its work. Look at that. So there's our functional requirements document. Table of contents. It is 46 pages long. Like I said, you really got to dial this thing back. Otherwise, it gets super verbose. Now, you can ask it to redraft this, make it simpler. You can remove some sections, like instead of having a whole section for revenue recognition, automating the billing process, all of this stuff, you could really dial this back for discussion purposes, right? So it's going on and on and on. But let's try to find our wireframes. Look at that. So it talks about user interface navigation, and there you go. Like I just delivered three of these last week. So had a discussion, I mocked up requirements, I fed it into this process, had it analyze it, had it do wireframes, delivered it. And the partner's like, what do I do with this? I'm not used to this happening after a 15-minute phone call. So your audience may need some adjustment. You may need to have a phone call with them to walk through this process, but absolutely phenomenal to deliver this. You can charge for this, you can not charge for this. If you're internal, you can have this conversation with your management, your design team, your end customer, finance, you name it. It is immensely powerful. So take this as a general concept, as a general theme, and I'm going to wrap it up because we're at 1 hour. So let's hop back to Studio 3. So we used to have Grumpy Steve at a table with a pile of documents here. And he wasn't happy because he was spending all of his day writing these documents because these developers are so fast now. They're able to crank out a PTE in 1 day. But now Steve is the bottleneck with all these documents. So we jump forward, and this is a horrible, grimacing, creepy Steve smiling, but at least he doesn't have any documents on his desk because he's now able to use the agent for requirements, scopes, use cases, stories, design discussions, wireframes, functional requirements, software requirements, whatever you call them in your organization. And once the PT is developed, Steve or the developer can easily create user guides and test plans, whatever you need. So really, really powerful Don't think of these AI tools or agent tools or even GitHub Copilot as only a development tool to write code. They can be just as powerful for writing all of these documents that are essential to the development process. So with that, I hope that was useful. I am finding it incredibly useful. So I am cranking out these documents every single day, 1, 2, 3 of them a day, sending them out after a conversation with a partner or a customer. So with that, I hope that was interesting. Hope that's useful. So go vibe code a lot of stuff. Vibe code all your documents. Okay, have a good one.